Special meeting of August 6, 2008 has just now begun. And joining me is my colleague, Greg Smith. That is a quorum, and the meeting is now in session. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the committee meeting. Mr. Smith, on consent, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So moved. Unless there's somebody who didn't fill out a card for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Nobody. Okay, fine. Okay. So, Ms. Daniels, if you don't mind, I'd like to give an opportunity for number 7 to be the next one, so the 2 speaker cards could be done. Could we know what number 7 is?
Item number 7, motion Lavange Smith relative to directing the Bureaus of Street Services and Engineering to, with the assistance of the city attorney, report in regard to the feasibility of constructing a new sidewalk through the Cahuenga Pass and related matters.
Sounds good to me. Connie Elliott, who wants to speak for the proposal, and also Daniel Bernstein. Come on up. Daniel Bernstein and Connie Elliott. Connie, you're up.
Hi. I'm on the board of the Studio City Residents Association, but I live on the eastern edge, so I'm traveling the area that we're talking about quite often. And even as a driver, I'd like to see the pedestrians on a really good sidewalk so I don't have to dodge them. I think it's wonderful that this has been proposed, and I'd like to add my support. That's about it.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Sarah.
Daniel Bernstein. I live in the area. I'm a past president and co-founder of the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council and a member of the Cahuenga Pass Property Owners Association. I'm speaking for myself. As a longtime resident of the area, this is a section of the pass that connects this valley, the valley, with the city, and it has 16 lanes. No, thank you. 16 lanes of traffic on the freeway and on the surface streets, and no sidewalk. There are ways to correct this. I'm a cyclist also, so I'm acquainted with your issues in Mandeville Canyon.
Yes.
We have bicyclists take their lives on the hands when they come through the Cahuenga Pass also. As far as widening the area, it's a difficult proposal. I was just talking with the engineer, and the freeway has essentially taken all the pass. Now, and feasibility is a very touchy issue. The possibility of doing something major here, if we could do it, would be to correct the gradient of the freeway, bring it all down below to the berm level. Yeah. So the freeway comes through level. We don't blow off a lot of fuel going up and down through the pass, and we'd be able to create a situation above the pass, park-like, more pedestrian-friendly, more community-friendly. So when you talk about feasibility, I understand we have a school there, so we have the possibility of getting safe travel to schools. There's a national issue on that, and we have all kinds of opportunities, and I recommend we do a study and look at all alternatives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Do we want to have any comment from our city family here, BOE? Do they want to say anything?
Search Dad, Bureau of Engineering. I think we do have some staff in the audience that would like to come up from Bureau of Engineering and Bureau of Street Services. Thank you.
I mean, everybody's moving forward with this. I'd just like you to react to the last constituent's comment more than anything else.
Sure. Mike Brown with the Bureau of Engineering Street and Stormwater Program.
Yeah.
Pardon me for the delay. Hugh Lee from the Bureau of Street Services.
Steve Chen, also from the Bureau of Engineering Street Program.
We have a draft report on this issue, on the feasibility study. It's almost done. We've gone through the review. We should be, as soon as the city engineer signs it, we should be submitting it very soon. We've taken a look at the feasibility of putting in a sidewalk. We have some challenges to do that. The reason is that, we have some steep slopes, near vertical slopes, and we are going to have to put in some what's called a soil nail wall, a bulkhead, and a retaining wall in order to move the street or make enough room for the sidewalk adjacent to the school. We figure that we can get an easement from the school because, you know, it's not really usable property at this point, so our estimate does not include any cost for easement. Now, as we go to the north of the bridge, the Mulholland Bridge over the freeway, we're going to have to actually shift the Cahuenga Boulevard over to the west a little bit so that we can avoid these high walls and these high cuts. I mean, it is doable. Of course, you know, anything else today, it's the money that is the issue. And we can do the project. We're estimating it just around $13 million. That's total cost. That's about $7 million for the actual construction. Once we put in the design costs, the construction management, the contingency, and also the escalation costs, which we figure 3 years out, it comes out to just around $13 million. That's a very rough estimate at this point. You know, we can fine tune that as we get more information, but that's our what we call now our type O estimate.
Okay, Smith.
Have any sources of funds been identified for a project like this?
We've been working with street services and to try and identify some type of funding. I'm not really sure. I mean, you know, at this point, it's just, you know, kind of searching for something that could be available. We don't have anything solid.
Because obviously, I mean, $13 million is about what we spend our entire, much more than we spend our entire sidewalk program for the whole city. So that's not likely unless you identify source funds. But I know I got a letter recently from Congressman Sherman saying Safety Lou is coming up again. What projects would you like to identify for federal funding? And I know the Valley got a lot of money in the last Safety Lou. Other parts of the city got none because their congressman didn't go fight for them. So now is the time, I think, to ask for Safety Lou type money in the reauthorization for projects like this, as very special called out projects. But other than that, I don't know where we get the money. And I wouldn't want to spend a lot more time, staff time, after you've done that basic analysis on a project that's never going to get funded unless we get some other source of funding for it. So
we can work with Department of Transportation
why don't we
talk
bring that
about
up to them?
that.
Because I think we did the instruction just the other day for them to begin meeting with the council staffs to identify projects like this. And maybe we should suggest to CD4 that this would be a good Safety Lou type project.
Make a note of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, at this point, we can approve the process that we're doing here, but we're not providing any funding for this. And would it be the right thing for you to come back and give us a report on this?
Yeah, we could do that. Like I say, our report is going to be submitted very soon. We could certainly come back and go through a few more specifics as to what our challenges are and some of the things that we looked at up there.
So then, basically, what we approved today is what?
Well, you have two choices. You can either approve the motion, which in essence, it sounds like they're reporting in response to already, just from the sense of it, or we can hold in committee pending the receipt of the report and discuss it some more and take action that way. It's up to
See, what I would like to do, if it's okay, to approve it, what we're doing here is a concept, and then instruct you to see if you can find the funding and then report back to us if you've had any luck on it.
Which was 1 and 2 of the I therefore moves anyways.
Yes.
Identify the cost
Yes.
and funding source, so.
You can send it forward too, that's fine.
Yeah.
So moved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Now we're here for the greening, which is really exciting. Environmental Affairs and Board of Public Works, environmental friendly street surfacing.
Item number
Item 1 and 8.
Joint Board of Public Works, Environmental Affairs Department report and communication from Environmental Affairs Commission in response to motion, Labange Perry, relative to the feasibility of using environmentally friendly street surfacing materials. This item was considered by the Energy and Environment Committee on July 1st, 2008.
Good morning, council members.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm not sure.
We know where we're
It's been a
at.
long day already, and I'm still calling it morning. Well, thank you for hearing this matter today, and we're going to combine a few things. I think it's not just the alternative surfaces, but also the Green Streets Initiative, which we started up here in the city about a year ago in May of last year. And I'm going to give an overview of what the initiative's about. I've got a PowerPoint with some photographs to show you what the ideas are. And then Beth Gines, Assistant General Manager of the Environmental Affairs Department, will talk more about that, but more specifically also about the porous pavement report, as will Hugh Lee, who's from Street Services here. And Ted Allen is here from the Bureau of Engineering, and he'll talk about what we're doing in terms of funding for this initiative, or at least seeking funding. And there are other folks here in support of this, so maybe if you all could just raise your hands, those of you who are here in connection with this particular item. Part of our team. We also have Robert Vega and Wing Tam from the Sanitation Department who are here, Bureau, who are here to answer questions.
Great.
So basically, it worked. So Green Streets, I mentioned we formed it May of last year, and the idea is to promote this notion of Green Streets, which is a low-impact development type of best management practice to address urban water quality issues. And it comes out of the IRP as one of the IRP elements, and also will be folded into the Water Quality Control Master Plan, which you'll be seeing soon. There's a lot of reasons to do it, which I'll go over in more detail in a second. But beyond water quality, there's also groundwater recharge, the reduction of the urban heat island effect, and carbon sequestration. So there's multiple reasons. I think you know much about the water problems in Southern California and the types of pollutants that we have in our urban runoff. So what we've learned over time is that there's many ways to address it, but the best way is to use natural processes, because soil, vegetation, and all the things connected with that are a really natural cleansing process. They take those pollutants and convert them into nutrients. It's the beautiful concept of waste equaling food, and that the closed cycle of nature that is important to use. So if you can take the runoff over vegetated areas, you've got the best solution, and you also have the other benefits that we talked about. So what that means is throughout a city, the more you can distribute these types of green best management practices, so create more of that green infrastructure, the better. And in terms of green streets, which might also include parking lots and medians, the design is a pretty simple one, as you can see here. It basically allows the water to run in over a recessed area so it percolates down. Right now, 20th century design, everything bumps along a curve right into the storm drain, basically untreated, and it crowns over medians and other areas. So this is a different type of design. We learned about it. It was pioneered really in the Northwest, where they have an awful lot of rain. So what we're going to try to do is adapt these concepts to Southern California, but they still have the same problems in terms of water quality. They also have combined sewer systems, so they have other issues in terms of the water getting into their system. But so they started a lot of these programs, and we've learned from them what their benefits have been, part of which is a reduction in permeable surface and a great runoff reduction, and we've learned a lot on their costs. In Portland, Oregon, I just wanted you to see a little bit about what that program's about. What I thought was interesting about Portland is they'd established a 1% fee on street construction projects to establish a Green Streets Fund. And we've learned that the County of Ventura has also just adopted, just a month ago, a Green Streets policy, and they're setting aside 20% of their street budget for green streets for these types of projects. There's a lot of ways to approach it, which we'll be looking into. Now here's, just to show you some designs, here's a before picture of a street in Portland, Oregon that was one of their pilots. Here's the after picture. So you see the bump outs there. You might not be able to see it well here, but in the next picture you can see there are notches in the curb. So a very simple idea, put a notch in the curb, the water runs over it, and on the other ends of it goes over the top, goes into it, soaks down, and is cleaned. The idea here is you can't capture all the water from a big rain necessarily, but if you capture the first flush, that's the most important part. The studies have shown that in the first few hours of the rain, all the gunk that is in the air and on the streets is the most polluted. I've seen the pictures. The first flush looks like coffee. It's pretty gross. By the time it keeps raining, it's, so the first flush is what we need to capture. And this is another example of what they've done in Portland, and we have a couple of examples, or one example at least now here, like this in LA, of what you can do along a commercial street. Again, just the notch, the recessed garden, and it filters in. Here's another example, and you can see the grate so that people can step on it, and there can be ingress and egress from vehicles. So in our Green Streets initiative, we basically review pilot projects. We've got a project matrix that we've developed with weighted criteria very similar to the Prop O program to identify priority sites. We've been looking at funding streams. We've developed some funding sources that Ted will talk about later. We also got some funding, which you're going to consider later on, or as part of this, from the Coastal Conservancy for a pilot project, which I'll show you pictures of in a second. And we want to institutionalize this also. So we have the Street Services, Bureau of Street Services, headed by Lance Oishi, is developing design standards so that these types of designs can become standard instead of exceptional, so that when we develop streets or when developers come forward with ideas for sidewalks, they can use these. It won't be something that has to be retrofit. And in fact, Mike Brown of the Bureau of Engineering is here, and they're looking at ways to include these designs in all pending street improvement projects. Did I get that right? So here are the members of, by representation of the Green Streets Committee. So it's myself and a number of the people that you see here. And there's, in some instances, we have several from the different bureaus or departments.
Let me just ask you, our Department of Planning, when we put out specs for development projects, and they obviously do streets too, and they do curbs and so on, can we make that part of a requirement going forward?
That's an excellent idea. In fact, we just discussed that this morning with planning. We had a meeting on green alleys, and they want to include green streets and green alleys in their community plans, so that there's an outreach component to it too through that process. But I think that would be.
Yeah, I think every project that is going to deal with an alley or a street or sidewalk should parking lot, anything, everything should have this requirement in it.
Good idea. So just to quickly show you, if you haven't seen it already, that same Portland design that I showed you before is in place in downtown LA. It was brought to us by a private developer, the South Park Project. They did it themselves because they had developed in Portland, so they brought the idea down. They wanted their building to be LEED, I think it's LEED silver, so they wanted it also to address water quality. So if you have the chance, if you haven't seen it, it's worth running by there just on Hope Street. Now, I want to tell you about two of our pilot projects along the LA River. Part of the master plan is to green the neighborhoods and to create a corridor of green streets as much as possible. So we have two pilot project areas. The first one I'll talk about is Oro Street on the lower end. That was actually done in collaboration, our city as well as Northeast Trees. And it was the ceremony commemorating the completion of it was last year. So quickly, here's some pictures before. It's a pretty standard urban street. The construction, and just wanted to show you how deep they went during the construction process to excavate so that the water can infiltrate through these new designs and into the pipes there, which are perforated, so it'll collect water, and then it all runs it off to an infiltration basin down the street, which is a park right near the river. So it all gets cleaned before it goes into the river, and there's monitoring. This is shortly after completion of construction. The picture on the right side, if you're standing right next to it, you'd see it kind of looks like a kitchen colander. It has holes in it so that the runoff from the driveway would go into the filtration process that I described before. And then it got planted, and here it is sometime last year. The meandering sidewalks and then the native plantings. So our next pilot project, and one that you're going to consider today, is in Riverdale. So it's in the same neighborhood. The reason for the selection was, one, to invest in the neighborhood, and then also because it flows right into the river. And our funding authority, the Coastal Conservancy, is very interested in funding in that neighborhood. So we have a $500,000 grant for a pilot project, and this is the idea, some of the ideas that are being considered for retrofitting that particular neighborhood. It looks a lot like Oro Street, so the before pictures will be the same. This is an idea of what we want to do there. And part of what we want to learn in this process is how much it costs to do in LA, how we design it for LA, like they learned in Oro Street, what sort of vegetation will do well in LA, and we'll be doing some water quality monitoring as well. I should let you know that the Watershed Council is also doing a pilot on Elmer Street. So this is just to show you how we hope at some point, we're not doing this yet, but at some point to prioritize where to put these, because obviously we'd like them in as many places as possible to put them in pending projects. As you mentioned, excellent idea. For retrofits, where would we put it? So we might start looking at prioritizing where the pollutant loads are. And this is just one example, one watershed, one pollutant sink that comes from automobiles. And then you line that up with catch basins. And this is a map of catch basins, and it might give you some ideas of where we could put these things. This is the last slide, and I just wanted to let you know that we're also working on green alleys. We're collaborating with USC, the Center for Sustainable Cities, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who heads that program, to look at how to implement a green alley program in the city as well. Councilmember Labange did a motion on that, and we'll be reporting back to him on some of the ideas there. And then part of this whole idea, we folded into the Green Streets Committee alternative surfaces, porous paving, which I'll have Beth Gines talk to you about.
Thank you, Paula. In LA, as you well know, is what's called an ultra-urban area where more than 50% of the city is paved. And it creates greater problems for trying to get stormwater and captured and recharged into the subsurface, and also to creating water supply out of our stormwater runoff. In 2005, Councilmember Lavange requested that the city examine the use of porous pavement to avoid damage from rain, basically, and with the idea that if the water could go through the pavement, maybe our pavement would last longer. What he asked the Environmental Affairs Department and the Bureau of Street Services to undertake that examination. I'm going to fast forward over the 3 years of efforts to try to get those two groups to agree on a report and a single mission. To what we finally did was bring that issue to the Green Streets and began having discussions there with the larger group. What we found is that the Bureau of Street Services does, according to their mission, build very safe, cost-effective, and durable streets. They do a wonderful job of that. Environmental Affairs, according to our mission, was looking at porous pavement from its environmental benefits. We were looking at trying to use it to get more water into the ground. We wanted to capture the buffering and cleanup that happens when the contaminants that are in stormwater move through the soil column and into the groundwater. It's a very cost-effective means of stormwater treatment. So as the discussions developed, the Green Streets attendance expanded significantly. Stormwater folks were coming, Department of Transportation folks. There were a lot of additional folks that came to weigh in on this discussion. And what we found is that one of the largest stumbling blocks to the implementation was that we had these separate missions. And over the last 6 months or so, we were able to combine the missions and to look at it from a wider scale. We found that we found that by everybody expanding their missions, both Environmental Affairs looking at it from a street perspective and then having the Street Services look at it from an environmental perspective, that we could actually create a report, a joint report, that moves forward the idea of using these systems as stormwater capture and recharge, as using them to create additional water supply, and of also using them as part of our climate change mitigation and adaptation measures, and also as part of the whole process is basically the design of becoming a more sustainable city. It's the way that we take the missions, environmental missions, the missions of sustainability, and put them across the missions of all departments and programs within the city, so that we eventually we incorporate what the missions of other organizations into our own, and that will move us forward and really helps to develop our sustainability abilities. So we began to, take the report. So the report that you have received is accompanied by a letter from the Environmental Affairs Commission, which I just want to draw your attention to. The letter asks, it acknowledges the report. It says that it is a good report, but asks that the city consider going a little bit further in the implementation of the report. They have asked for, they recommended that the city set increased infiltration goals of 100% infiltration from each parcel of land, and 50% infiltration of the runoff from streets. And then they have some very, very specific actions, which I would like to bring your attention to on the second page. And then what they also ask is that this suggests that the city can more effectively address complex environmental issues across departmental boundaries in the context of sustainability actions that are currently being planned. The departments throughout the city are in the process of developing sustainability plans for their own operation and activities, and we're also going to use these sustainability plans as the basis for and a place where we can actually write down these cross-purpose missions of the different organizations. So I wish you would consider some of the additional asks that have come from the Environmental Affairs Commission, and we were very pleased to work on this project with the Green Streets. It's a wonderful forum for these sorts of cross-departmental, cross-mission discussions.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention that Beth Giants and her team did put in quite a bit of work on this, as well as our team. Hugh Lee is here. I don't know, Hugh, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. There's a lot of work, a lot of discussion, a lot of brown bag luncheons around this with a good product that our board looked at, and then, as she mentioned, her commission added some additional.
What are the asks that you're asking for at this point?
They have asked for the additional permeability goals. They've asked that the process basically be sped up and that we spend less time on pilot projects, take advantage of the examples that have come from other cities, and just move forward, make this part of our the way that we build streets and also the surrounding sidewalks.
I agree with that. What do we need to do at our end?
Well, I was going to ask you, because I'm not sure, when you say parcel by parcel basis, are you talking about new parcel maps that are presented, or we're going to go across the whole city and start retroactively doing this?
I think new at this
New
point.
parcels.
Yeah.
So we're direct.
Retroactive would be great.
Yeah,
at some point.
yeah. We're also, I don't know how we'd ever afford it, but
Exactly.
that's
Yeah,
why.
there's an incremental
Okay,
cost.
so to clarify that this is new parcels. So our instruction would then be to the planning department to make that part of the planning review process and queue conditions on new parcel maps. And that's how you would do that, I would think.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
And also that in the planning for the construction of new streets and sidewalks, we also take that into
which
consideration.
we really don't do, private developers do on, but if you're talking about now repaving of our own new streets, then this policy to take effect on that too.
Yes.
So the 200 miles of new streets we do every year.
Well, I
in
think
theory.
to draw a distinction, I don't believe the report recommends that streets be done with porous pavement. There are just certain
No, it
types
says
of areas.
It's
But because
50% of runoff on adjacent section of streets.
so what we're looking at is not the streets themselves, because there's some issues regarding weight bearing that our
Okay.
Bureau raised, and so, which are very legitimate. So we're looking at areas adjacent to the streets, maybe gutters, parking areas, particularly parking lots are
Yeah,
good places to do it.
In fact, I instructed my staff about 3 weeks ago on all new developments. I want to start seeing that in all the parking lots.
That's great.
And we
That'd be
built
great.
I think we did the first permeable sidewalk in the city about 2 years ago in my district.
Oh, that's terrific.
So I think these are doable. It requires us to go to Plum with them probably and say, we need this, particularly as we do general plans now and all the updates. We're in a 10-year cycle to redo all our plans. Now's the time to ask for those in those plans. But when you're talking about 50% runoff of streets, it says streets, so we should define that to say the gutters.
right.
Yeah.
Within this report, we made a distinction between the asphalt of the street because that is we're
not
not quite
permeable.
there yet
Yeah.
on that. But what's also considered part of the street in the designs that are done by street services are the gutters and the adjoining areas,
Right.
whether it's
Okay.
It might be
sidewalk or
worth the
whatever.
clarification.
I think just
So we
clarify
should-
that one bit of language there on your letter, then to say the adjacent
Yeah.
streets, the curb section of adjacent streets.
That's an excellent.
Okay.
Or those runoff areas. They're not always swales.
Swales, very good point, Councilman, because I think we need to look at this as part of the solution, but not the only solution,
Yeah.
permeable pavement. Really, I think the more we could go toward vegetated areas, the better. But in areas where you can't, and because we're such a dry area here, a combination, or just looking at it as
Why
one
don't
way to
you
do
take
it.
their letter and bring us back some cleanup language and to be more specific? I think this is a very broad statement that's probably not going to solve the problem.
I think the letter's from their commission
Yes,
too, because
yeah.
our board approved, we didn't approve that letter because
Yeah.
that came after.
What we'd like to do is actually clean it up and take action right away and move it through the process. the sooner the better, obviously.
Sure.
Hi, Keith Pritzker, Deputy City Attorney. I wanted to suggest that to the extent that we're able to add to our groundwater, usable groundwater through this process, that perhaps the Department of Water and Power should be in the loop, and if we are adding to their usable water, perhaps they could share in the costs.
Good point. Have they been involved with you?
Yes.
As part of your list there?
Yes, they're part of the Green
Did you
Streets
raise that
Committee.
discussion with them?
They've raised the fact
So
that they're
they're
interested in
encouraged
helping
and
to
they
fund
wanna
it.
do it.
Yeah, they're very supportive. It's been terrific, actually. I mean, it's been a really, really great team. Everybody's been very enthusiastic and supportive, and it's a lot of fun, actually.
Well, it's fun to
So-
actually get your hands around something that you can make a difference in and do quickly
Yeah.
in different ways. So my hope would be this, as we continue this discussion, to get some action items for us to actually act on, and also bring the city attorney's office into it so that everything is in the right process on that in DWP. We could, right out of this committee, suggest action that should go to the full council or because I know I saw a 4-month review to the other committee, the environmental committee.
That's on the alternative surfaces, yeah.
Right.
report.
That'd be terrific.
And one
We'd
of
be
the
happy to do that.
concern is we've spent decades removing bump outs at the city attorney's behest because of legal liability issues. We've removed an awful lot of mediums. Now we're starting to put mediums back. Now we want to put bump outs back.
Well, that's a design from Portland that's kind of well-known. I think we'd have to talk it over with Department of Transportation.
Definitely.
Right now, what we're looking at, that's not a high priority, that type of design. I wanted you to see it because I thought it was a good demonstration.
In some communities it might work, in others it probably wouldn't, and particularly as you look at traffic flow, we can't be restricting. And also, we have an awful lot of bike lanes now in this city, and our traffic width of our streets is designed for usually 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and a bike lane. And so if you put bump outs, you're going to lose something, and I don't think the bike community would like that. So
Yeah.
I think there's some real challenges to that concept that we have to be very careful
That's a
about.
very, very good point. And what we're more interested in is seeing the Portland style in the commercial area where you
Yeah.
see the rain garden on the sidewalk.
Okay.
That's where we're
Push it that
heading with a
direction
lot of.
rather than now.
Right. Yeah.
Good. Excellent.
So a more open parkway.
Just curious when you would, go ahead. When
Well,
you were
Ted was
talking
here just
about
to-
alleys. I'm not big on paving alleys where they're already permeable. I mean, they're dripping in. Is it a city policy that we want to pave all alleys?
No,
You just want to keep them so accessible, right?
right.
CD8 it is.
Well,
No, I've
thank
heard-
you.
I've heard the 8 issue, yeah.
In some, I think I was going to say in some districts, I think they're very interested in doing that. But I hope we were talking about that this morning. I hope we can convince them to do them in a sustainable way, so that if they're paving them, they have some sort of green strip, or they have grasscrete, which I'm sure you've seen, which is like the concrete that has open holes, so you're not entirely pervious or impervious. Excuse me.
Just have to mow
So-
your street once in a while.
Some of the designs are pretty interesting, and Chicago has a green alley program. So the Center for Sustainable Cities here at USC has mapped out all of the alleys in the city and has looked at some priority areas, and we can really reclaim a lot of perviousness if we look at alleys in a different way. They've done some good work.
Very exciting.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what we're obviously pleased with this. You'll come back with a set of action
Yes.
oriented.
Yes, we will.
Detailed stuff. Little ones and big ones all together.
Great.
So we can move with it.
Great. We'll be
And
happy
what about
to.
the one, you mentioned the 1%. Obviously, we have an ordinance already for the 1% arts fee. So we could easily attach that to any construction projects and add that as a 1% tax or fee to support these kind of actions.
Yeah,
So
it might be a way to go. I did have a study, we're looking at funding. I don't know if Ted, you want to hear from Ted a little bit, just on funding streams for capital. But before, Ted, you get to that, on maintenance funding, that's obviously a big issue, and you can't get that funding from bonds. So I've been having different people help with looking at that over the past year. Green LA, who's here, is also interested in helping us with that. Stephanie Taylor from Green LA. And last year I had a summer, an MBA students at Pepperdine took this on as one of their projects, and they researched maintenance funding for these types of projects around the country, and they had some recommendations. I have an intern now from UCLA at the Masters of Urban Planning program who's also looking at that issue. So we'll be coming back later on with some recommendations around funding, but we need to study that a little bit more. It's a more complex issue. It might include assessment districts, all of those things which are very complicated. So a lot of options to consider.
Okay.
So Ted's been looking at the capital funding.
Hi, good afternoon. For funding of these projects, as you know, funding's tight everywhere. So for Green Street elements in our projects, we're looking at two kind of categories of projects. We have our existing street program in Bureau of Engineering is mostly, reconstruction, traffic relief type projects. Funding sources have already been set. On those, we're going to incorporate Green Street elements wherever we can within the approved funding. But as we request those in the future through MTA calls or whatever processes, we're going to make the Green Street elements part of our standard application. They'll be built into our estimates in the future. So in the near term, we'll work in what we can within the budget. In the future, we'll be requesting them as part of the budget. The other category of projects are these Green Street projects that are in the project matrix that are really designed as Green Street projects themselves. They're not overall traffic relief or whatever. So for those, we're looking at grant funding sources, conservation agencies, things like that, trying to find funding. A variety of the departments are monitoring those and partnering to apply. And the one brought here today, Riverdale, is one of those. So that's kind of the two-prong approach. Also, in the future, we'll probably start trying to work some of these into the capital improvement expenditure program in the city for this coming year. That might be kind of tough, but we put a blurb in last year that it's coming in the future. Projects hadn't been identified at that point, but start trying to get little bits wherever we can at this point.
We're gaining momentum. Ted's been great to have on the team. He's a real asset, we really have a lot of stars on this committee.
I'm wondering if any of the stars want to come up, like Green LA or others, and just talk a little bit about this. Would that be helpful for the record?
They're actually not in the committee. It's all a city family committee, but I think they're here in support.
Yeah.
In parent support, and I think, the issue
I think you have to speak into the mic.
Introduce yourself for the record, too, please. And you fill out a card after.
Great. Stephanie Taylor, Green LA. And so we've been working closely with the Public Works Board and the Green Streets team to be a resource to the city on working out some of the technical details and the funding issues. And so Northeast Trees, who implemented the Oil Street project, is one of the members of Green LA, and Tree People and Heal the Bay, et cetera. And so what we really are looking at the issue of the maintenance issue. And so as an example, I think there was a proposal that we were looking at with the commissioner around increasing the stormwater protection fees, but that, the timing wasn't right and so on. But that's as an example. And so maybe that will be something that we can put forward in the future. And so we really do need to look at what are some of the available ways that we can raise revenue for ongoing maintenance. And so, and I know it's a tough issue for a lot of
issues.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
There's also somebody here from Heal the Bay.
Oh, please, great. Heal the Bay, come on up. But do fill out one of these cards, would you, that you've spoken? One of these things.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Susie Santolina, and I'm a staff scientist at Heal the Bay.
Okay.
We're just basically here to support the Green Streets initiative and to commend the committee on all their efforts to install green elements into the streets of Los Angeles. We think that all these installments aren't only going to improve coastal water quality, but also the quality of life for the people who live in LA by making the city more welcoming and more attractive. So again, we just wanted to commend their efforts. In Ventura, the City Council recently approved a Green Streets policy, and efforts are currently underway to install green elements, as was mentioned earlier. And they're truly taking this issue seriously. As was mentioned, they're reserving 20% of the paving budget for green streets, and they're moving forward with many pilot projects. But many of the Green Street elements explored in Ventura could probably also apply in LA. So we'd like to encourage you guys to look at what their Green Streets Council report says, and you can get some ideas, such as, implementing energy-efficient streetlights and streetlights that are dark sky, so they only shine on the street, save energy, and stormwater, biotreatment and detention, as well as just planting and preserving large canopy trees. So again, you can just check out Ventura's report on that, but we just wanted to come and support and commend the committee on what they're doing.
Well, we appreciate that, and we also appreciate you coming and working with them.
Can I ask you a question? See how you feel about this. Obviously, Prop O is oversubscribed now. I mean, we've pretty well spent the $500 million on projects, but some of those projects are falling out already. They're not going to get done. Do you think some of this would be useful, Prop O money would be useful for some of this kind of program? Because it deals with stormwater very effectively.
True, it's true. And, you know, from monitoring on pilot projects, you can see the effectiveness of things like biofilters, and you can use that as proof and, you know, to back up allocating funding toward that. So,
Well,
I think that may be true. Yeah, Prop O, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
Prop O money was used as part of Oro Street, wasn't it? Wingtown? Yeah. So to the extent there might be any money available, we could certainly look at.
I know one project just
adding
fell
the-
out, but we had a project waiting to take its place. But
Yeah,
there's
there's a
going
long
to be
list.
other projects that will fall out or don't get completely
Right.
completed, and it would make a good use, I think, of Prop O type money. And maybe this would be ideal if we can get some good demonstration projects, as we talked about with Gila Bay years ago. We always knew
Right.
Prop O was only half the
Right.
problem. So as we talk about a future bond issue in the next couple of years of Prop O, maybe we should use these projects as an example of what we want to do.
In the
That's great.
Ventura City Council, you're
I have it in my hands.
Yeah.
I gave a copy to Laura, so if you.
Very good.
It's a good report, so.
Anybody else want to comment? Any other bureaus or departments here that want to add to anything? Well, at least from my end, I know Ms. Smith will agree with me. We really appreciate everybody working on this, and we want to be used more effectively to get the action oriented in
Right.
the policymakers of the city council. Doesn't seem to be any downside. And Raj, you gave me a note here that says, return with a joint report with recommendations regarding this matter. Return within 30 days. Work with city attorney, DWP, and clarify language. So
Okay,
moved.
on the alternative street surfaces, yeah, we will do that.
Yeah, the recommendations send the planning too.
And planning too, yeah, right.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So in the interim, this will be held in committee pending this report back?
Yeah.
Very good.
And again, the report back, we want to have action-oriented stuff so that in the fall, we can actually start putting this stuff out there in motion.
Right.
We don't want to wait.
I'm going to quote you. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Before you're out
That's
of the
great.
building, I want to take you downstairs and show you that calendar.
Okay. I have to.
Thank you all very much for
Thank you.
coming here. Any other public comment? Any other discussion on any other issue? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Roosevelt, we
Yes.
still have item 8, I believe, here.
I'm sorry, we just tied, did not, we tied the two together?
Then that will be continued in committee too?
Pardon me?
We need you to approve the funding for the Riverdale Coastal Conservancy. We got a grant award.
Oh, yeah.
So you just need to agree that we should accept it.
Yes, so moved.
Thank you.
And for the public record, the funding on item 8 is approved per the Board of Public Works report.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you for that, Adam. Okay, anything else, anybody? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks.